Here is the Amazing Yamaguchi Revoltech Venom figure, and one of them is the authentic and the other is a bootleg. Which one is which? The answer is, this is the authentic version and this is actually the bootleg. At a glance, you really can't tell the difference. So what I'm going to share with you is how to differentiate between the authentic and the bootleg version if you see them online. From the front, at the back of the box, everything is the same. Even the grammatical errors are the same. This one is the top of the original box. This is the top of the bootleg box. And here's the bottom of the box. Again, exactly the same. The problem with the Revoltech boxes is that it doesn't have the authenticity sticker like the Mayfax figures. One thing different about the packaging is that for the original, the printing is really sharp. The colors are very vibrant, being an authentic figure. For the bootleg, however, the printing is actually slightly blurry. There, this one is actually not really sharp. It's not my camera being blurry, but it is the printing itself. When we put it side by side, you can see the word Amazing Yamaguchi more blur on the bootleg. It's definitely sharper on the authentic. Same goes for the word Venom at the front. At the top of the box, you can see the printing is sharper on the authentic. Same goes for the back of the figure. But the problem is that when you see this figure online, it may be difficult for you to tell whether the printing is sharp or blurry because of the lighting of the photo. I managed to find two minor differences that may help you to see whether the packaging is original or bootleg, and that is by looking below this marvel.com. This is how the original looks like, with very little space at the top and the bottom of the word Marvel. But for the bootleg, there is more space at the bottom of the word Marvel. So this is one way for you to spot that the packaging is bootleg. The second difference that I managed to spot is the word Kyodo at the side of the figure. For the original, it is quite centralized. There is equal amount of space at the top and the bottom, but for the bootleg version, it is off-center. It is slightly higher. There's more space at the bottom of the word Kyodo. It's the same for the other side of the box as well. One difference that you can see on the figure itself is the original has the teeth painted individually and you can see the gums between each of the teeth. But for the bootleg version, the teeth is totally white. Even the gums are painted white between the teeth. So this is one way to tell that the figure is bootleg without opening the packaging. Just from the pictures itself, that's how you spot the bootleg version. Now let's get the figures out. Here are the two figures out of the box. And before I start on the figures, here's the bootleg box. You can see the glue over here on the inner side of the box. But for the original, there isn't those glue markings on the plastic on the inner side of the box. And also, the figure stand is separated into three different parts on the plastic for the original. For the bootleg version, it's all in one piece. The base of the stand of the original is actually blurry compared to the clear plastic of the bootleg version. For the inner cardboard, there's not much difference between the original and the bootleg. The original will have this piece of instruction. I got the bootleg second hand, so I'm not sure whether the previous owner threw this away or it doesn't come with one in the first place. Like I said, this is second hand, so I don't know why there is actually an extra tendril over here. Anyways, let's get the figure out of the clamshell. Here are the two figures. How to tell the accessories aside is by looking at the Revoltech joints. The paintwork on both the bootleg and the authentic is actually quite similar. They have the silvery part at the tips of the tendril. But the obvious way to tell them apart is this. The original has dots engraved on the joints, but the bootleg version has a smooth joint. Same goes for all of the tendrils. Same goes for the tongue as well. You can see the dots on the joint of the original. The tongue itself looks exactly the same. And here's the bigger tendril, same thing. The paintwork is really similar. They have the silver paintwork at the end of it. To tell them apart, look at the Revoltech joints. Original, bootleg. For the alternate eyes, the bootleg has the number 1 embossed on the inner side. The original is just smooth on the inside. Other than that, the sculpt is quite the same, just that the original is more glossy compared to the bootleg. Now, accessories aside, here's a closer look at the figure. And yeah, I left the plastic all at the joints because I'm not going to sell it off after making this video. So I'm not going to take out these plastics at the joints. So at a glance, the bootleg really looks the same as the original. Like I mentioned earlier, the teeth is totally different. It is totally white on the bootleg. On the original, the teeth are painted separately and you can see the pink gums between each of the teeth. Second difference is that the Revoltech joints are actually different in color from the figure itself. Whereas for the original, the color of the pegs is really close to the color of the figure itself. The third difference is that for the original, the spider logo is printed really quite sharp and crisp, both the front and the back. It is painted quite neatly within the lines, but for the bootleg version, you can see that the paintwork is not really that sharp. Look over here, you can see kind of the white line. At the back, it's not so bad. But look at the paintwork. On the original, it is sharper and neater and within the grooves. On the bootleg, the paintwork is kind of slightly out of the grooves. And overall, the original figure is more glossy compared to the bootleg version. I think for Revoltech, it is quite seldom that you will get a problem with the paintwork for the original. Most of the time, the original paintwork will be quite sharp. The articulation on the bootleg is quite decent. The joints are not so tight, but it isn't loose either. So it does stay in place. Then if I lift up the hand, it stays in place. If I lift up the leg, it stays in place as well. So the joints are not as tight as the original, but it isn't loose either. And at the center portion here, it is kind of loose. It is the same actually for the original as well. This centerpiece is loose for the original as well, unless you kind of push the torso inwards so that it sits in place better. But other than that, like I mentioned earlier, the joints on the original is slightly tighter. And one final thing, here's a size comparison with retro Marvel Legends Spider-Man. You can see the Revoltech Venom isn't really much bigger than the Marvel Legends Spider-Man. This Marvel Legends Venom is actually bigger. Another thing to note, sometimes the listings at eBay or AliExpress may use the original picture, like in this listing, but the price point is always a giveaway. If the price of a Japanese storyline like Mayfax, Figuart or Revoltech cost around $20 or so, it's definitely a bootleg. The next 4 pictures are from the reviews of that listing that I showed earlier. This one is missing the word Marvel. This one is also missing the word Marvel. This one has Amazing Yamaguchi there instead of Marvel, lol. And this buyer shared a close-up of the head where we can see the teeth of the bootleg figure. This last picture here is just to share with you. You can easily spot the bootleg box by looking at the space under the word Marvel over here, as I've shared earlier in the video. Overall, the quality of the bootleg figure isn't really that bad. It is still quite solid. It doesn't fall apart easily or anything, at least for this bootleg Revoltech Venom. I hope this video helps in spotting the difference between the original and the bootleg figure, whether when it is in the packaging or when it is loose. Thanks for watching. Do check out my other videos on reviews of Marvel Legends and also comparison between bootleg and original Marvel Legends figures.